Need help? Call our cybersecurity team and book a consultation with us today.
All right, we're going to go ahead. Welcome, everyone. This is Alex Waymar with LA Networks. We're going to have a short presentation today about cyber insurance. But before we start, I want to tell you a little bit about what we're doing. You can type in your questions into the Q&A portion of WebEx. Hopefully you can see it in the lower right corner of your WebEx session. If not, you may need to open it. And we'll have look at it and either respond to you or interrupt me, and we'll talk about it in real time. Also, we can ask questions at the end if we should have time remaining. Part of what we're doing today is sponsored by Cisco. They're our #1 security partner. We have other vendors that we work with, but Cisco's has a very good all-encompassing suite of technologies. So they're our best partner in that regard. But we do have our own internal ransomware defense bundle that we'll talk about at the very end. And that is a bundle of a security assessment, a vulnerability scan, and a firewall audit. And that's a pretty good thing, especially if you get questions about how to know where you are in your current security posture and what your environment's really like. So a little about LA Networks. We were founded back in 1997 as a route switch company, and over the years have grown to do a number of different technologies. But our main focus is to be consultative engineers and help our customers get the right solution for their business issues and problems. We do voice collaboration. We do data center, which is storage and systems. We definitely do route switch, firewalling in that. And as we're talking about today, we're big into security as well. All of these things that we do, we also can augment your staff as a managed service. If you have things and projects you need, we do project-based as well. Basically, we're headquartered in Los Angeles, but we do have a nationwide and global footprint to assist companies that are all over the world. Predominantly, 70 to 75% of our staff are engineers. It's very much a one of the things we're most proud of is that we're very engineering focused. So that's leads into that last little icon there about the 90% of our engagements are repeat customers. That's really a big selling point, is that once you use us for something, you'll realize that you had a really good experience and will come back for more, which is what we want. So today we're going to talk about cyber insurance, not from the point of view of selling you cyber insurance, but in the point of view that you probably have it or need it. And when you go to sign up or renew, you're going to get this questionnaire about requirements to meet the underwriting for that policy. So we're going to talk about what some of the problems are and how we can help you. So basic premise is that claims are on the increase. And we'll talk a little bit later about why and what types of claims. But as that occurs, that puts a lot of pressure on these insurance companies to not have to pay out, millions and billions of dollars of claims. So they're going to try and make sure that you ratchet up the security on your network to kind of thwart the majority of the things that are causing payments to actually spend all the money that goes into a cyber event. So we're going to talk a little bit about what the insurers are asking for and what are the typical questions. So some of the stats that these stats, they take it with a grain of salt depending on what organization you go to. They all have different stats, but the one that seems kind of reasonable is they're saying about 78% of mid-sized corporations in the U.S. do have cyber insurance currently. Obviously the type of insurance and the type of policy varies from company to company, industry size, you know, depending on the size. But most people have, I think it's something like 1 in 5 companies have, or 1 in 5 people have been part of a ransomware event, for instance. That's a huge number. So if you haven't, somebody you know obviously has. And so basically, why would you have cyber insurance? Well, it could be very costly if something happens to you. Again, this number here, take with a grain of salt. We're saying an average cost to remediate just a ransomware attack. There's obviously different types of cyber events that will cause a claim, but for ransomware, we're saying 1.85 mil. That's not just paying ransom to the company that's ransoming you, but it's also things like, you know, rebuilding your reputation, handling notifications, dealing with, you know, lawsuits and things. So there's and forensics and there's a lot of parts to how you clean up after an event like that. And that doesn't include the cost of your own business. There could be lost business and such that would make that number go up dramatically. But so insurance helps bring that down, your cost and expense down when you do have an event. Also, there's a number of industries where, you know, you have contractual requirements with either your downstream customer or your upstream partners, because we're all kind of in this chain of trust. And if I share my, you know, customer info with you or you know, proprietary info and you get hacked, you know, there's a direct cost to me for what happened. So we're seeing more and more when people are doing business with or partnering with another firm where there's questionnaires quite similar to these cyber insurance questionnaires to get the security posture of your company and to kind of disclose and attest that you are doing things and you do have these security controls in place. So that's pretty important as more and more people realize that even if they take care of their own house, they're still kind of reliant on whoever's the weakest link in their chain. So the types of insurance are basically, oh, we had a question. Let me go back. What was it? Will they pay for ransomware? Yeah, that's a good question. So it kind of differs, and it depends on what kind of policy you have. So sometimes they'll pay, sometimes they'll try and bargain, depending on, it's gotten more complicated now depending on who, if it's just a cybercrime from one of these gangs, or if it's a nation state that's kind of behind it. It can get complicated, so there's no direct answer for that. I think it probably has to do with your coverage limits and whether they can make it go away or not. In a lot of circumstances now we're seeing for ransomware where the security researchers are able to shut down the command and control for these organizations and sometimes get the decryption keys. So there's been a number of instances where people have gotten paid out by their insurance to pay the ransom, and then a few weeks later, you know, the keys are disclosed and everybody else gets out scot-free. But not a lot of people want to play that waiting game, especially if their data is being held. And I guess we didn't really go into what ransomware is. I'm presuming that people are kind of familiar with the concept, but basically when you have some way for your network or your systems to be exploited, and people are able to get in and surreptitiously install some software that will encrypt all of your data without you knowing it, up a little message saying, hey, do you want your data back? Pay us in Bitcoin. So at the end, I guess we'll talk again about the security controls that mitigate you getting those ransomware infections. But there's other things that can happen too beyond ransomware. So going back to the types of cyber insurance, there's first-party coverage and third-party coverage. First-party is really protecting your data and your employees. And third-party is where you're talking about protecting you from basically liability to a third party if if you get hacked and a third party then has to sue you because you've hurt their business or their reputation or what have you. And the types of claims that we can look at, we were looking through a sample policy that I'm not going to redact and show because it was like 8 pages long, but they had a list of what an expense is for some sort of cyber attack event. So business interruption expenses, cost of notification, crisis costs. I'm not going to explain these because I'm not really an insurance agent, but a lot of these are pretty kind of self-explanatory. Forensics expenses, research expenses, extortion, and extortion expenses I think is mostly ransomware, but also technology fraud, theft, loss sometimes is that as well. But these are the basic quantifiable costs that the claimants will try and get money from the insurance company for. And the types of events that will trigger claims, again, in our sample policy, they have 4 types: a cyber information breach. So that's, again, these terms are not super well defined, I don't think, but we're talking about, information disclosure and things like that, where private information is leaked. Technology breach, similar. System failure, that's, a type of event that maybe isn't criminal in nature. Technology fraud theft, that's your ransomware basic classification. And from these types of claims, we're looking at, again, a period of 2016 to 2020. The top 5 events that the insurance industry really saw is, by and large, ransomware, 30+%. Your old school hacking of people just going in and doing things and being a menace to your systems for whatever reasons, that's still a good 10%. And then email compromise and phishing attacks, which are both email kind of based business email compromise events, those are both under 10%. So they're really a hard second. Email security is really a second to ransomware in terms of what's been claimed in that time period. I think since that time period, since 2020 to 2022, I believe ransomware went up higher, but I don't have the stats on that. But presumably that's just going to continue increasing because there isn't a lot to slow it down because there's many companies out there that are targets. Everyone's a target. Staff errors, that's exactly what it sounds like, where people have made a mistake and maybe they disclosed an Amazon bucket to the world by accident, and that got you into information leak, or they inadvertently deleted a database and caused business disruptions and things like that. So as we saw with the 32% plus of ransomware claims, this is a good quote from Cole Hanley. Basically, what he's saying, as a paraphrase, is that with one ransomware claim, you could pretty much fully max out your insurance coverage. You could hit your limit, with one event, and in that one event, with all the expenses involved, with or without paying the ransom, you could pretty much max out your coverage in 1 week. So it's pretty dangerous, and we've had customers of ours that we've people have called us up asking for help with cleaning up after a ransomware attack, and then we find out it's one, or maybe their third one, and that's how do the insurance companies keep paying this out? Well, they can't. It's killing their margins. So as we're saying here, basically their actual actuarial modeling in the past didn't cover this much claims activity, so they're having to catch up. And in this graph here, this is just over 2021, 3 quarters. Basically the same going into 2022. We saw a 96% year-over-year increase in 2021. And that seems to be the same trajectory going forward. So the only real response insurance can have is to reduce the number of risky clients they have, either by not renewing policies or by denying new policies. And that's kind of what the focus of this meeting's about. They can increase your premiums, which is what they are all doing. Or they can just start taking away things from your coverage and taking away all the stuff they, that are expensive to kind of whittle down that exposure. So in our example policy that we were investigating, it was an $8,000 premium in 2021, and it rose to a $19,000 premium in 2022. Some changes in the types of coverage and inclusions, exclusions, what have you, but it's more than doubled. So that kind of fits with what what our narrative is here is that every year this stuff is going up in leaps and bounds. And then what hasn't really been in this information is what came to light in the past few months with the war in Ukraine. Obviously, the Russians and Ukrainians have big hacker armies and cyber warfare type capabilities. And that now raises the interesting question, like if you do business with Ukraine or you had a regional office or a branch, you can get caught up in this very easily. And so now I think Lloyd's of London released a bunch of directives about how to classify cyber warfare as an exclusion, so that they don't have to pay out. If you, for instance, get a ransomware that isn't from a criminal gang, it's from a nation state that is maybe funding the criminal gang. So it's very difficult now to attribute where an attack comes from. It's difficult in any cyber event to really attribute where and who is behind it. But now there is this get out of jail free card if it's war related, that a lot of these policies won't pay out. So that brings us all to light that there's deeper stuff you can do, like segregate your networks if you're doing business with companies or branches that are in such kind of a war situation. And to add on top of that, we have our normal background of vulnerabilities and exploits that are always going around. In the past few years, we had a couple of notable ones for Exchange email servers, and also a Log4Shell, Log4j exploit, which is more recent. And we've seen people's policies call those out exclusively as their only contingencies. Like, if you haven't patched this Exchange server, if you haven't scanned and patched all of your systems that use Log4j, that you don't get a policy. And we've had engagements to go out just looking specifically for those vulnerabilities. So once you have proof of that, they remove the contingency and they'll renew your policy for twice as much as it was last year. So going into what can you do to reduce the costs, and what can you do to make yourself more secure so you don't have to be a claimant? The insurance industry has a bunch of security controls that they want to see done. And questionnaires that you'll get when you're getting a new policy or renewal, they're going to try to dive into these, and every questionnaire looks slightly different, and they ask the same kind of questions but in a different manner. But they all kind of come down to these security controls. And hopefully, if you have an InfoSec, capability in your company, and you've already picked a security framework, and you're working towards, being a good network citizen and locking down all of your systems and patching all that, hopefully you're in a good position. But that's not the majority, that's the minority. So most people, when an insurance company comes and says, what are you doing for multi-factor authentication, half or more people scratch their head and say, do I need that? And that's when the conversation starts. And it shouldn't start there. It should start well before your insurance policy is, as a catalyst. But the thing is, we've seen a similar thing with industries that kind of were managing their own risks, like PCI requirements that the credit card industry had to basically enact, and every year, every couple of years, they'd ratchet up what levels of security you needed to continue to be PCI compliant. But that was a very formalized plan. The industry had to basically do that since they were losing, billions and trillions of dollars. The insurance industry doesn't have really that kind of organization yet. Each insurer does things, the way their underwriting department wants it to be done. So we don't really have their leads. Each questionnaire you get is going to be slightly different. So what we typically want you to do is have a security framework and measure yourself against that. And if you implement most of the controls in that framework, you're going to pass this with the underwriting, requirements checklist with no problem. But if you do none of that, these top 5, which are in dark blue, are the ones that the insurance industry generally are asking about. The ones that are in light blue are not currently required. Some people may ask you questions about it, but it may or may not it may not mess up your policy cost or chances. So a question about whether you need all of these different applications. Well, yeah, you sort of do. The best thing is to not have 6 different vendors, one for antivirus, one for anti-malware, one for intrusion protection. It'd be very nice if you could have just a few vendors that cover most of these controls. It's easier on your IT folk and your InfoSec folk. But, it really depends. If that's what you have today and that's what gets you through this question, your renewal questionnaire, that's fine. But going forward, it's nice to pick vendors that can operate in different regimes and that there's good overlap. And we'll talk about what some of those vendors are. But talking about the top 5, the number one that everyone is asking about is, do you have multi-factor authentication? So multi-factor authentication is basically our method to make sure that just if somebody steals your username and password, that they're not able to log in and do bad things. So you need to have some sort of application on your phone or a token on your keychain or what have you that will validate that you are who you are. And so even if some ransomware group in Eastern Europe steals all of your list of usernames and passwords, they're not really able to do anything. So that's why it's such a good mitigating control, because once you have MFA, you're really locking hackers out to a good degree. Since we sell Cisco Duo, I'll bring up Duo. There's other ones as well, but Duo is a very good 2-factor in MFA. It can do everything from just normal 2-factor authentication to a full zero trust suite, which basically locks down your applications to only allow people that are really explicitly allowed in, which is a great feature nowadays. You'll see more and more about zero trust coming up in the future. I'm not sure when insurance underwriters will be asking about it, but I'm sure in 5 years from now, the security landscape is going to be very, very different. But definitely Duo is a great product, and it's cheap. Endpoint detection and response, that's what we're talking about, software that would be installed on your laptop or desktop PC type thing, which would see malware or attacks and then block them. So that's something everybody should have, and it's more than just an antivirus solution. It should be something that also is looking at behavioral patterns and sees, when a spreadsheet tries to open up your email and stuff like that, are those things, legitimate, or should it pop up an alert or block it? So again, Cisco has a great product called AMP, Secure Endpoint, and it's very efficient at blocking those attacks and then alerting you to which computers in your network have seen that attack, and you can even watch it as something tries to work through your network. Cisco Umbrella is listed there too. It's not an EDR, but it's a very good Also, it's a very good product to just block these types of attacks from even starting. It's a DNS-based security product that doesn't really require any effort for you to deploy. So that's very good. Encrypted, tested, secured backups. So going back to the #1 culprit, which is ransomware, the reason most ransomware attacks or what makes a ransomware attack successful is if you do not have another copy of your data. Obviously, if somebody encrypts all your data, but you can pull out a backup and restore it all, that renders that attack pretty much dead. So the more sophisticated ransomware attacks will actually go after your backup systems first and make sure that they've either deleted, blocked, or scrambled your access to your backups before they actually encrypt all your data and pop up the message asking for Bitcoin. So that's really the most sophisticated ones. Is they'll spend some more time on your network trying to make sure you don't have a way to restore. So obviously that means your backups can't be on the same network using the same administrative passwords that your normal network is, because if your normal network gets hacked, your backups are also going to be hacked. So it needs to be off your network. It needs to be much more secure. Maybe something in the cloud would be good. There's so many different permutations of how this would work. In this case, we usually point people towards Veeam for backups. It's very easy to use and back up on your virtual machines to the cloud. Data is also a great product for that, especially if you also want to have a local appliance doing that for things like your laptops and desktops. So definitely, if you have backups, you're in a great position to avoid ransomware succeeding. You still have to clean up after it, but at least you are not out of business. So even if your insurance company pays off ransomware, you still have a long time of cleaning up and rebuilding all your machines and recovering. Privileged access management is an interesting one that is popped up into these insurance renewals. It's a wider topic. It's not a single product or a single thing, but the idea is that you want to have a policy of least access, least privilege. So if I can't tell you the number of times we walk into a customer's site and ask about how they manage privileges, and it turns out everyone in the company has admin rights to their computer. Meaning they could, if they click on the wrong email, that can trigger software installation because they have that level of access, which they shouldn't have necessarily. But it's even worse because you see this all the way through to databases and applications and cloud apps and stuff where people just have way too much access and they don't need it and they never use it. But when a hacker gets control of their account, the hacker can then leverage that additional privilege to do bad things. So a PAM system, a privileged access management system, is going to sit there and enforce and track and make sure that people aren't accessing things they're not supposed to. And when people do access things they are supposed to, you can have many levels of logging and validation. I mean, you can even have the software do a full screen video capture of when an administrator logs into, let's say, your Exchange server. So you can always play it back and see what happened. And, and if somebody clicked on the wrong thing, it'll show it in the video. So there's many different levels to this. So in the little bolded solutions there, obviously you can do least privilege best practices for free. You just need to put in the effort to make sure you have users and groups and privileges and permissions set appropriately through your organization. And you have to do that in any case. But then there are products like Beyond Trust and even Duo can enforce and track what users are doing. But that's a big topic. The last of the 5 security controls is email filtering and email and web security. So obviously the main way people are getting attacked is by clicking on things, either in their email or on a website. So you need something there to go through the emails and make sure that URLs and things are sanitized or deleted. This also extends out into things like phishing and other business email compromise, to have a security appliance that that actually looks into the emails and makes sure it's coming from the right person and it's not being spoofed. Sorry, another good question about Office 365. That comes up all the time. Do you need anything additional if you're already using Office 365 with their advanced email security? The answer is it depends. It doesn't hurt to have a different appliance that isn't Microsoft look at your emails. And there's definitely other things we can do with an email appliance that isn't Microsoft. For instance, I don't know what the state of the art is today with Microsoft, but as far as anti-phishing controls go, there are some good things we can do, for instance, with the Cisco secure email gateway, which will make sure that you're not getting these emails that purport to be from your company's president, you know, telling you you need to initiate a bank transfer, but that email actually came from, you know, a hacker outside your organization. So those are pretty important. For web blocking and things like that, again, a Cisco Umbrella, which is a DNS-based security solution that can do, you know, block you from going to inappropriate sites, and make sure you don't click on things which go to, you know, a malware site by accident. So those 5 controls, if you follow through with those, you should be able to basically get through your cyber insurance renewal. If you want to go further, obviously there are things that those other controls that we're not talking about, which we would want you to start looking into. There's a whole slew of things that they'll also ask you for in the insurance renewal, for instance, questionnaire about, like, do you have security awareness training? Do you do, you know, phishing campaigns to test your employees' proclivity to click on random links? Things like that. So there's a lot more beyond this, but these are the ones that we see the industry is really pushing on. So how do you prepare for this, or for maybe your renewal? Obviously, if you have some of this stuff to remediate and strengthen, you need to start now and not wait until you get that questionnaire. So the best way to start is, if you don't really have a good feel for where you are, is to get some sort of assessment. If you don't already have quarterly or yearly audits, security audits by an outside firm, get somebody to come in and do something. We do, I think I mentioned earlier that we do a ransomware defense bundle, which is great because we'll leave you with a report about where you stand and what you're doing that's good and what you're doing that needs improvement, and kind of give you a roadmap and a kind of a gap analysis to get where you need to go. And that definitely dovetails into this, because then you'll be set for your cybersecurity, and you can even call out those exact ones, those 5 security controls, to make sure that you're ready to go for your renewal. Obviously, it helps to know what those the insurance company's requirements are before you even do any of this. If you have an insurance broker that you work with, by all means, ask them for those, you know, questionnaires. If they're shopping multiple carriers, the requirements are going to be different for each carrier. You know, they're going to have different questions, so you may want to wait until you pick the one that has the best terms and conditions and pricing, and then get a copy of their questions right away. But in any case, you're going to have to expect this to be ratcheted up every year, and there's going to be more and more requirements each year, especially as this is a dynamic, you know, setting. As we start putting more controls in that block ransomware, then, you know, email compromise will go back up, you know, and then as people do more for email, then, you know, other types of malware incidents and vulnerabilities will crop up. So it's always a moving target. But the good news is that, you know, if you start early and you get on these controls now, you'll be in a much better position instead of having to start from scratch. So that's pretty much the whole thing that I have to offer you. I have some links here if we'll be sharing this, or if you're watching this video after the fact. The FTC obviously has a lot, and Cisco and companies have very specific targeted, for cyber insurance requirements. And I put one in there for Marsh, which is a larger insurance company organization, I believe, and they do some good reporting on what the state of the market is. So I thank you all for your time, and I hope this was of some value to you. If so, drop us a line, and if you would like to talk about some of these security products or possibly to get an assessment done of your organization, please call us, email me, and we'll talk to you about what we can offer you. So thank you all for joining, and I hope you're all safe and never have to actually make a claim. Thank you.
Need help? Call our cybersecurity team and book a consultation with us today.